Welcome to the Haven Community Conversations podcast, where we have honest conversations about faith, life, and everything in between. And today I'm here with Brandon Richardson, arguably one of the longest tenured non-family members. Sabrina's trying to claim that. I don't know if you saw last week's podcast.
I haven't yet.
Yeah, she has beef with me saying that you're the longest tenured. I told her that she's left twice and that should disqualify her, but you know.
Well, I'll leave that discussion between you and her.
She's also a lady, so I had to acquiesce. So maybe I was just kissing up.
Hey,
I really think
I'm just happy to be here.
I really think you're the longest tenured non-family member.
Noted. Make sure that's on my tombstone.
How long have you been at the church?
11 years and some change.
Yeah. How'd you find us? I already know this story, but I'm asking you anyways.
Just on Google.
Yeah. Yeah. You had moved here from where?
Rapid City, South Dakota.
South Dakota. Okay. And what brought you here?
Job.
A job with Exxon, right?
ExxonMobil, yep.
ExxonMobil. Okay. And so you're down here and you were looking for a church. How many churches you visit?
I think this was my third one.
Yeah.
Third one. I had received some recommendations from my pastor in Rapid City. Mm-hmm. I had been going there for about a year as a college student, and he had done some research, did some homework, but like a lot of the churches like in the Woodlands or around maybe the Spring area were very large, and I wanted to be kind of in a smaller church. Things just seemed to be causing me less anxiety when there were smaller crowds and everything like that. So I found you guys on the internet. The church picture was much different than how it looks today. We joke about that. But yeah.
And
Google search works.
What happened that first Sunday you went to go find us?
You're really going to make me say it, aren't you?
Yeah.
I saw that you guys were advertising being located in a high school.
Yeah.
And so I drove to, was it Oak Ridge North? Was that?
Yeah, the ninth grade campus.
Yeah, just the ninth grade.
Yeah.
And so I was driving around this campus looking for signs for the Haven. I called you, but of course you were preaching, so it's understandable why you didn't get it. But then when you received my phone call, you asked if you could learn more about who I was, so we went to Cheddar's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah, wow. I'd forgotten about that until you just said it. That's crazy. I remember that like yesterday now. Wow. Yeah, I remember getting that voicemail, and I was like, dang it, I forgot to change the website, and you were looking, and I thought surely he's not going to come now, but you showed up the next week, and we were meeting back in a home that was probably the lowest point in the history of our church, but man, looks like you brought the ray of sunshine. Brandon Richardson arrived on the scene at the Haven, and here we are, man. You've been here for over 10 years. What's the biggest difference between, so you said South Dakota, that's what you said.
Yeah.
But originally you're from Michigan though, right?
Yeah, originally from the Detroit area.
And how long were you in South Dakota?
5 years.
So 5 years. Okay, so, well, I went off to college, 2 hours north of here, and that was like a second home to me at the time. So what's the biggest difference between here and there?
South Dakota?
Either one, since you grew up in both, just up north there.
People in South Dakota are a little more reserved. They're by all means friendly, but they're kind of keeping to themselves, just kind of like the historical makeup of that community. They speak a little bit differently. Here, people are much more outgoing.
Yeah.
In Detroit, people were more outgoing, but it was all business, very kind of individualistic. Like if you could draw a Venn diagram of all three places I've lived, there'd be overlap with each one, and then distinctiveness for each one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay. All right. How many siblings you got, Brandon?
I have two older sisters,
Two older sisters. Okay. How much older?
10 and 20 years older.
10 and 20. Wow. I knew you had two older sisters, but I did not realize that was 10 and 20 years
Yes.
old. Yeah, so you're way the baby.
Yes,
Yeah.
and my oldest niece is actually older than I am.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, wow, I'm the baby too. So serious question. What's one geology nerd fact you wish more people appreciated?
That oil is not made of dinosaurs. It's not. It's made of like these things called phytoplankton. They live in like the upper water column and they photosynthesize. They do their thing. Like that's over 90% of what makes oil. Hydrocarbons.
All right. If you had to do whatever you wanted, what would that day look like? If you had a day to do whatever you wanted, what would that day look like?
Oh gosh. I would probably go down to a museum, and I'd have to think about which museum that I would want, but the bigger, the better, because I have a list of good museums, and I would just try to read all the different plaques.
Yeah. I need to do that more. You know, when you're raising kids, especially when they're small, it's hard to, you know, when I was a kid and I went to museums, had no interest in the plaques, so I just wanted to see things and you move through quickly. And then when you get little kids, it's hard to stop and do that and
Right.
see through. So yeah, I think
Well,
I
and then
need
they
to
get
visit more
tired.
museums where I have,
Yeah.
you know, can go at my own pace and stuff. What's the best museum you've ever been to?
It depends for what we're talking about.
Okay.
And man, they all have their own unique qualities that make them really good. I mean, there's one in Utah on the campus. It's really cool because you can walk over replica bone beds and like see them there. I mean, it's not technically a museum, but like the Mammoth site in Waco, they have like an open excavation where you can look and see that people are excavating Cenozoic mammals there. And then there are ones like the Museum of Osteology in Oklahoma City, where it's imagine all the different skeletons of like all these different animals that you can imagine packed into like one small gymnasium.
Wow.
So,
Wow. What's something quirky or surprising about you that people might not know?
I love to practice baking desserts, making different types of desserts, even though I don't eat them. I want to get into professional like decorating of cakes and as a hobby, and also I've been getting into like making miniature dioramas, like replicas of like maybe it's a dinosaur, or maybe it's like a prehistoric scene, or like bonsai or stuff like that.
With cakes?
No, not with
That's
cakes.
two separate things.
No, no,
Okay.
those are two separate things. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that'd be. You might have
Miniature
it. You
cakes.
might
Yeah,
have
is it
something with the
cake? Is it-
dinosaurs.
yeah,
with
that's
it. Yeah.
True.
Wow. You also like cooking carnivores meals. even
Oh
though
yeah,
you're
I
not a
used to do that,
carnivore.
didn't I? I used to make because I love to cook.
Yeah.
I would make food for people, but the only stipulation, and there's a reason behind it. It's not just because I want to force everyone to be a vegetarian, but it's because I don't know what cooked meat really looks like or should look like, except maybe hamburger, maybe some fish. But like, do not ask me to cook chicken or pork. Like, I don't know what it's supposed to look like. It all looks pink to me. I don't. I'm not cooking anybody chicken.
Yeah. So you're a vegetarian. You've you've been a vegan before
Oh yeah, for like 3 days.
for like 3 days.
And then I
Okay.
celebrated with a bag of cheese sticks after I ended that.
But you're you're a vegetarian who's doing or been on keto.
Been on keto. I mean, I'm doing it right now.
You're doing
yeah.
keto right
Yeah.
now. So what does what does a typical meal look like for a vegetarian that's on keto?
Well, luckily, there's a lot of different substitutes that are keto nowadays, especially after the pandemic. It seems like I eat like protein cutlets that are made from like mushroom. So it's using protein from a mushroom and kind of making a cutlet like that. I eat a lot of eggs, so many eggs. Although it's actually, since I've been eating so many eggs, my cholesterol's been better, I think because of keto. I have an addiction to cheese. So like I have just a cheese drawer in my fridge that I stock up on. Some people have emergency chocolate. I have everyday cheese. And I do eat tofu, like the extra firm pressed tofu. I stay away from certain protein sources, like other than meat, beans. You can't eat beans on keto. You can't have nuts or what we consider nuts. So
Yeah. Wow. Very, very interesting. You like all kinds of cheeses?
except cream cheese.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. You don't like
It
cream
just
cheese?
reminds me of sour milk for some reason.
Yeah. You like cottage cheese?
I love cottage cheese.
You do.
Love sour cream.
All right. Well, let's pray and then we'll dig in.
Oh, okay.
Father, thank you for this conversation with Brandon. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for being here with us, Lord. I just pray that you would guide our conversation, Lord, wherever you'd have it go. And we ask for your blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So what was life like for Brandon growing up? How did you get here today?
Oh, man. So I would say for the first 10 years, things were pretty normal. I mean, I remember having just enjoying like being a kid, and of course, I'd cry for this and that, whatever. But when I was around 10 years old, things got a little rough around the home. My parents' marriage started to dissolve, and that was really hard. And that's actually one of the biggest influences in my life, is like living through that. But always been obsessed with dinosaurs from when I was like 4 or 5 years old. That always stuck with me. When I hit 18,
Can I
Yeah.
pause and ask you a question? Because you mentioned earlier your siblings were 10 and 20 years
Yeah.
old, so there's a big gap between them too.
yeah,
Are they half sisters or full sisters?
they're half sisters.
They're half sisters.
Yeah.
Same mom or same dad?
Same mom.
Same mom.
Yeah.
Okay. And do they share the same dad?
Yes.
They share the same dad.
Yes.
So
they're full sisters.
Okay, so there's 10 years apart from there. So she was in a relationship before your dad.
Yes. She was
Okay.
married. Yeah.
She was married. Okay. Then a divorce, and then she married your dad.
Yes. And then
Okay.
they went through another divorce.
Yeah.
And so went to Catholic school, kindergarten through 12th grade. So that's 13 years. Never was Catholic, never raised Catholic. Wasn't baptized a Catholic, but there's still some very good beliefs that were instilled upon me. Without that school, I don't even know if I'd be a Christian right now, because there was just something to being involved in religion every single day. So that was really a blessing, and my parents sacrificed a lot to give me that. There are times where they probably would have liked to have certain things, but they did without. Catholic school's not cheap, and you're still paying school taxes for the public school. On that, on top of that, rather, and so when I was a teenager, I became very depressed. I remember knowing something was wrong, and I would tell people about it, and I think they were very sympathetic to me. I think that they cared and they understood a little bit about depression, but they were under the assumption that you had to have a reason to be depressed, like the death of a family member, the loss of a job, something like that, getting into an accident, those types of things. And they didn't really understand. They would say, we understand that you're depressed and we don't want you to be depressed, but we don't understand what you're depressed about. and I couldn't tell them. So that started when I was 14. That was the second big thing that probably had the shaping of my upbringing, was going through that. And then when I was 18, the Great Recession hit. And, Detroit was hit pretty much worse than everywhere else. And at that same time, I was going to South Dakota, so I had moved for the school year. My parents finally split up. My mom went to Florida. My dad stayed in Michigan. I went to South Dakota. Funny story. I went to South Dakota. The Great Recession happened. We lost our house because mortgage payments could not be made. I went back to Michigan for a year and attended a college there.
Okay.
And I painstakingly saved up for that year to get back to South Dakota. And I made it back to South Dakota with the help of some family members. They drove me there. I had $1,000 in my pocket, and I was like, I have to make this $1,000 last me. I had no car.
So what'd you do?
I walked everywhere.
You walked everywhere?
I walked.
Okay.
I walked, yeah.
You had an apartment or what?
I had an apartment. It was only a 12-minute walk
Okay.
from the campus of where I was going to school. But that place was, it was bought, and they were going to do some renovations, so everyone had to leave. I got a job in South Dakota working with a guy that had special needs. He needed supervision because he had a type of epilepsy. So me and two other guys that I met through the Christian group would supervise him and make sure that he was okay when he would have his seizures, and make sure that he took his meds on time and things like that. But that moved me like 2 miles away from school. And I needed it because I needed the income, and it was cheap rent. It was like, believe it or not, an economy-sized apartment. It was like $350 a month.
Wow.
And so I would walk to school, and I can honestly say, because a hill was in the middle. So I walked in the snow 2 miles to school, uphill both ways. Yes.
So you got the real story.
I do.
Yeah. Wow. So you made that $1,000 last.
It lasted me about my first year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I took out loans too and everything, but that primarily went to school.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So you mentioned you went to Catholic school when you were young. You had good and bad experiences there, right? Am I hearing, or most?
As far as liking it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right.
Definitely.
All right. When did your faith in Christ start to become real?
That's a good question. I would say I became more, and there's a reason why I distinguish this. I became more interested in spirituality when I was like 15.
Okay.
And then I was baptized when I was 16 because I had this idea in my head that if you died when you weren't baptized, you'd be going to hell. Those are some influences that I had.
Was that from the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But then I would stay it was at a David Crowder concert. I was saved.
Oh, wow.
I think for sure. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
With my youth group.
So how'd that go? Was there an evangelist there or something, or
No, the worship was just so moving.
just worship?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, do you like David Crowder?
I like the David Crowder band more than his. I guess he's solo now.
His solo.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's gone from the David Crowder, I don't know what the band was called, to just Crowder and then David Crowder. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think he's kind of discovering or going back to his roots with bluegrass and like church music and things like that. More power to him, but I kind of like the rock stuff.
You like the rock stuff?
Yeah.
How has your love for science intersected your walk with God?
Yeah. So in some cases, it doesn't. And what I mean by that is I, in my view of science, believe that science is off to accomplish a certain goal. And a really prominent evolutionary theorist named Stephen Jay Gould, he wrote about this. And he wrote about how science and religion are two different, he called them magisteriums. And a magisterium is something that is compartmentalized, if my words, and does not have the right to influence the other. In other cases, it has influenced my belief in my faith, because I look at things that science has an explanation for, but I feel I know better. And then that just tells me that science, you need all of these things to fall in place if it's done the way that science explains it. But my interpretation of the Bible says that it was done differently, and God has that power.
Okay. Has there been a time in your life when you didn't understand what God was doing, but now you can see his hand in it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when I moved down here, everything was okay for maybe about the first year. And this sense of bitterness just kind of really got the best of me, because I needed a job. I had student loans to pay, and the only place that had offered me a job was ExxonMobil. Very blessed by ExxonMobil, was taking care of me. Nothing bad to say, but Houston was different than what I was used to, and I did not enjoy being here. It was aggravating my anxiety. I was depressed because I felt like I had given up my dream to pay the bills. Traffic. Oh my gosh, traffic. All that construction was happening with 99. Do you remember that? Oh my gosh, it was terrible. So all of those things.
You probably never experienced traffic. Well, you were from Michigan.
Detroit is not this. I mean,
Okay.
maybe the center of Detroit is,
Okay.
but it is not. No,
Yeah.
you guys win.
Yeah. Well, 45 is one of the worst stretches in the United States.
Yeah, I hear it's the most dangerous too.
Yeah.
And so I was working through that, and then I had the opportunity to go to school again, and I applied in 2019, and I still can't believe it. I was looking at Texas A&M's faculty page, and I noticed a man on there, and I was like, that's my professor's husband. And a professor from South Dakota, that's her husband. And so I'm like, so he teaches here. And then I scrolled down a little bit further, and then the professor that I actually had, because they both have degrees.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's here too.
Wow.
And I personally, I mean, I like to believe, I'll never, I won't know in this lifetime, but I personally like to believe that God was influencing that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it turned out great. I mean, the first year, I essentially got to learn remotely, so I didn't have to make that commute. Work gave me the flexibility that I needed to take classes when I had to. Learned a lot. So,
Yeah, I think God's the ultimate chess player. Somebody once said that God's always doing 10,000 things in any given moment, and we can only see maybe a handful of them. And also think about that in terms of, like, in your situation, him bringing them down here. It wasn't obviously, I think maybe that's why you hesitate, maybe not, is like, it wasn't all about Brandon, but some of those 10,000 reasons, could be about Brandon, you know what I mean? And then another, a bunch of reasons that probably have to do with their life. You know what I mean? And what he's orchestrating.
Yeah, I mean,
and how
I'm
he's
kind of
working
half
those things
joking
out.
about this, kind of half not, but like there are some philosophers who believe that this world is the best possible world, like this dimension, if you will, is the best possible created dimension that God could have created, because he wouldn't have created an imperfect dimension, and so like if this is the best world out of all of the worlds, like I could see him doing that because it made the most good for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's deep, Brandon.
I
Yeah.
read a lot of philosophy.
You've ever could open a can of worms. We don't want to go there. You ever read anything about open theism? You know what that is?
I it's not for me.
Yeah.
I don't believe it,
Yeah. No, I don't hold to it either.
but I could see why the discussion pops up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely jive with part of open theism that I tend to see, agree with is the realm of possibilities in any given situation. Just because he gave there was a guy the other day gave an example in the Bible of where God had decreed something, or he had warned about something happening, and then because of the people's reaction, repentance, or whatever, it didn't come to fruition what he said would happen. So it's kind of like knowing those different possibilities. Where I would disagree with open theism, I believe, I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth because I'm definitely not super well studied on it, is that God doesn't know the future. He just knows all the possibilities. Whereas I believe he does know the future and the possibilities.
So that's interesting because I've heard it that way with one caveat. He could know the possibilities, but chooses not to. That's what I've heard.
From open theists?
Yes.
About open theists? Interesting.
Yes. Now, I don't think that makes much sense, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that someone's not a Christian because they don't,
Yeah.
or because they do believe
Well,
in
maybe
that.
they mean is like, hey, A, B, C, or D can happen, but it depends on human free will or something. Maybe that's how they see it. But I thought they didn't, that God had no foresight whatsoever, which, that's where I would kind of jump off the bus or whatever. So interesting topic. Maybe we can talk again and just like really dig into some different theological discussions, because I know you like some of that. Let's see here. So you mentioned early on that you battled with depression, and it didn't seem to be circumstantial. I mean, you did mention your parents' divorce, but it didn't seem to be situational depression. You said that there was a lot of misunderstanding around that with some of your peers, correct? Yeah. And then, so when you got here, fast forward when you got here, not saying you didn't battle with it, during college or whatever, but you got here and some things kind of triggered your anxiety. And then maybe in a little bit we can go on, into 2020 and talk about that whole thing. Or maybe actually this might be a good opportunity if you want to talk about some of that. How's God met you in your mental health struggles?
Well, I say that he provided. I mean, he provided the right people, the right psychiatrists, the right therapist, the right classes to take.
Let's start with, you want to tell us a little bit about what happened during COVID?
Oh yeah, I went crazy. Woke up one day, I didn't recognize that it was me. It was just a completely different way of thinking. I became like paralyzed by fear of people persecuting me, being out to get me. I mean, it ranged from things like me sitting in my front lawn because I was waiting for like a white van to come pick me up, like take me away. I don't even know who that was supposed to be. I guess it's kind of hard to explain. I became afraid to drive. I started to believe like just different things, like horrible things were being plotted against me, or like life was plotting against me. Like I said, I can't really explain some of this.
Yeah.
When you're not in your right mind, it becomes hard to express when you're
Yeah.
in your right mind.
Yeah.
But like bizarre things, like at any given moment, my tree could fall down and crush my neighbors.
Yeah.
I started to believe that rats and insects were living in my house, eating my electrical wires. There was this one time I was getting ready for a class, and I went in to wipe my face because I just had breakfast or something. So we were taking we were having our classes virtually over Zoom. For the first year of the pandemic, from fall of 2020 to spring of 2021, and I went into the bathroom for something, and I saw a frog in the commode. There was a real frog in the commode. Well, hold on, I'm getting it. So there was a frog in the commode,
Yeah.
and I was worried, like I was freaking out because it's like, oh no, now I'm starting to see things.
Yeah.
So I took my camera out and I took a picture of it, and it appeared on the camera. So I'm like, that's a real frog. There's
So
a frog.
You thought it was maybe you were
didn't
hallucinating?
know. I didn't
Wow.
know. And
Yeah.
so because things had just gotten so
Yeah.
crazy by that time.
Yeah.
And I'd never experienced that before. Like I'd
Yeah.
heard snakes and things could get in there, but it was treating the commode like a jacuzzi.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I went to go get a container to like go put it in, and when I came back, the frog was gone. But I had that picture.
Well,
I
glad
had
you
that
took a picture.
picture.
When I was a kid, I saw this big snake in the front yard on the front porch, and I tripped out, got my brother. I was yelling, "Snake, snake, snake!" And he grabs his gun and he runs out on the front porch, and it's gone.
And he thought you were messing with him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he thought I'd made the whole thing up. I was like, I swear to you, there was a big snake, and that thing did not look like it could. It wasn't like a little grass snake. It was big. Didn't look like it could slither away that fast. So I don't know if I hallucinated it or if he slithered it away in that short period of time that I went and got my brother. So I know what it's like. Of course, I wasn't going through the mental health crisis that you were, but I know what it's like to see something and not know if you really saw it or not. But good thing you had the camera.
No, yeah. I mean, I don't have that phone anymore, but it was like I had the common sense to be like like logically process that. So that's why luckily I don't have schizophrenia. That wasn't my diagnosis because I can interact with reality that way. But yeah, I guess back to the mental health stuff. I had never experienced anything like that. Like I said, I'd always experienced some depression. But I lived with it. This was like a paralyzing fear.
Yeah.
And I think the most distinct moment, I mean, I guess I'm just treating this like a symbol. Like I was trying to read my Bible for comfort, and I'd always I had a pastor one time who said, always when you're struggling or when you're in a bad point in life, go back to the basics, go back to the Psalms and the Proverbs, and just kind of soak in that advice and that praise. And I went to those books, and I had never been so distracted isn't even the right word. I had been, again, just paralyzed. Like my hand was shaking so bad I couldn't even turn the page, and that hurt. I mean, I felt even disconnected from the Lord due to no fault of God's. I'm not putting the blame on him by any means, because I know he was always there. But I just say that because I was not in the right mind. I couldn't even go to God for help.
Yeah. I remember you coming to me for help and me not knowing what to do. And
looking back at it, I wonder if I may interrupt you. I mean, I need a reality check too. How bad was it? Like looking back at that and looking at me, was it weird?
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't weird. I was gonna say, thank God I was further along in my ministry walk, and thank God, I'd been through like faith walking and stuff like that. Because I think at at one time I would have been really, I might have struggled because I couldn't fix you, at one time. But I was in a place I was able to separate that. But I mean, there was, I mean, it still taught me. It gave me practice in sitting with you, and just loving you and being a friend, being a, being a pastor, not meaning that I had to fix everything. You know what I mean? Just being there for you, and yeah. So that's what it was like because you were in a place where you were looping, and nothing I said was going to change that. You just kept going back. You had something, whatever it would be at the time that was stuck in your head, that you were paranoid about. No matter what I said, you found your way back to point A again. You know what I mean? I would try and take you to point B and
No, right.
offer you a
Yeah.
different perspective, and you found your way back to point A. And it gave me practice in one, just like I said, just being your friend and pastor, but then also being able to say, hey man, I'm always here for you. I'm always going to be here to be good counsel, to be a listening ear, but also it's okay to go get professional, help as well.
And some of that was validation to me because one thing I struggled with and why I probably didn't get on medication sooner is because I was afraid that my depression wasn't bad enough to get medication because I didn't want to look for the easy way out. And I think during that time, I received validation from other people, advice from other people saying like, no, this is not normal.
Sure.
And so I went to a psychiatrist, Christian psychiatrist, and I thought I was just going to be on it for a little while just to get me through the pandemic, but and hopefully things would have been better. Spoiler alert, they didn't get better just because the pandemic ended. It took a while to get the right medication, but taking a genetics test, which they have now for some mental health markers, after taking that and talking to my psychiatrist, she told me like I should have been on those like if I was feeling that way, the genetics explain it. So
what would be your advice to other Christians who may struggle with the same thing?
I would say it takes.
I'd say for anybody, but the reason I bring up Christians is just, I think everybody feels shame around mental health, but just speaking to Christians specifically who may feel shame or, why am I this way, stuff like that, you know what I mean?
I think if you're feeling shame, it's hard for me to sympathize with feelings of shame when you didn't do anything to have that. But I recognize that people do. But I would say there's nothing wrong. I don't feel there's anything wrong being on medication. The result of the fall is that there's many different types of diseases. I think mental health is, even the secular world says that mental health is a disease. It's a defect. And that's not something to be ashamed about because it's not your fault. It's not, and if it's not your fault, it can't be a moral situation. But don't be afraid in seeking help. And that might look different from person to person, expertise to expertise of your provider. But there's nothing wrong with going in and getting a consultation done. The other thing is it's going to take time. And it's not just necessarily, I'm going to take this pill daily and then a light will switch. It's not like that. It's a puzzle. And a piece of the puzzle is the medication. A piece of the puzzle is meeting with the therapist. A piece of the puzzle is work that you put into yourself. And finally, I saved the best for last because I'm a geologist. It's going to take time. It takes time.
Yeah. Would you, what about did you feel when you were in the thick of it, did you feel like you were distant from God or he was, punishing you, or you done something
No.
wrong, or anything like that?
I didn't feel like God had removed himself from me by any means. For better or worse, I'm trying to think of the best words to explain this, but I view life as circumstances, in a sense, separated from God. So, like, in all the bitterness that I've ever had against my life, because I've had a lot of it, believe me, I never really felt like God was responsible, maybe with the exception of one thing. I never felt like God was using those circumstances to make my life horrible. I always felt like if I was mad at, let me put it to you this way: if I was mad at anyone, I was mad at Adam and Eve. That's where I had my anger at,
Okay.
not God. But I did feel separated from God because I felt like life and fear was separating me from Him. And that was, ooh, I pray I never go back to that. That was probably the lowest point in my life. Was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Imagine it. Is it hard when you're in the thick of it not to? I was going to say trust your emotions, but our emotions are important. They're there for a reason. But when they're out of whack, is it hard not to believe that they're speaking the truth? Does that make sense? Or that they're
Is it hard? I think so. You mentioned looping. When you make a logical argument for things that you're afraid about, we talk about this. It's. I went through a class that was called radical openness, and it's for basically like. I think you can imagine when I say personalities like mine. If you know me, you know what I mean. And it's teaching people to be more like open to change and open to different like interpretations and trying new things, which is interesting because like I do like change, but there are other things that I struggled with, like the anxiety, like always feeling like I had to be on the defensive as far as like, okay, if this goes wrong, what is my plan of attack? And then being able to discern which thoughts are like logical and illogical. Like when I was afraid to drive, I mean, I spent therapy session after therapy session trying to gain back the ability to drive. And at that point, I had looped myself into believing that I was going to get in a car crash and I was going to hurt somebody else. And nothing logical could convince me otherwise. And then there's also something, especially in the days of the internet, if you have anxiety or anything like that, I would caution you against confirmation bias. And that's basically like if you look up, I don't know, can you go to jail for jaywalking? You're going to find someone on the internet who went to jail for jaywalking.
Yeah.
And that's going to make you get in that. Exactly. Exactly.
So how have people in the church helped and maybe not been so helpful in your journey with mental health?
Just to make sure, like church meaning the Haven?
Yeah, or just church in general, Christians
Well,
or the Haven.
I think that's probably the best example because this church is where I've opened the most up about the mental health. But I just wanted to, I didn't know if you were asking for how can the church be better at like the larger church.
I think it could be a lesson for all of us. Right? Yeah.
I mean, Terry and Candy, man. I mean, that was during the pandemic when they were the most vulnerable population. They should have been the ones quarantining, but they had me over their house every day because they knew I was struggling. I mean, just a community of people who I know have always loved me and always supported me. That wasn't in question. But just being here when we were having small group and congregating together and just allowing me to break down. Do you remember that?
Them allowing you to break down?
Remember when we were in a small group and I don't. Oh, it was bad. I don't blame you if you don't remember.
I remember you having a panic attack one time when it was a few of us, but it wasn't a small group session.
Uh, we were, some people were on Zoom.
Okay.
We were over there.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, and I think during that I used an analogy. It was like my tolerance for existence, because that's what it's like dealing with depression. Is even existence is painful. Like you would do anything to not be conscious. That's why people sleep so much when they're depressed. But it was like inside of me there was a match, and no matter what I did to feed that match, nothing would take kindle. And that's what a lot of the pandemic was for
Yeah.
me. As far as like the larger church, like all of Christendom, I think we're doing better. I think we're doing better, that we can talk about these things, certainly in that arena. And I think in some cases, in seeing a doctor, they've opened up. The church has opened up a lot about that. The only other suggestion I would have is don't be so quick to judge for people who choose to take mental health medication. I know that's a larger discussion that's happening not only in the church but also in society and politics. But I'm a strong believer in just letting people make those own decisions in the spirit.
Yeah.
With their doctor.
Yeah. Would you say that's been one of the least helpful things that you've seen, and how the church has handled mental health? I'm not saying the church as a whole, but that you've seen,
Yeah, I mean, I've encountered very loving people who may believe that getting on a medication for mental health is doubting God, maybe in a certain sense,
yeah.
and they mean well.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
But it's not helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that needs to be said. And that's why I dug a little bit deeper. What do you know about God now that you didn't a decade ago?
Oh, wow. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I can't. I'll flip the question a little bit because it's something that I'm discovering. I still don't know it.
Okay.
But one thing that I'm trying to experience God as is like all these different types of roles. Like He is God the ruler, God the creator, God our friend, God our savior, God our father. Like all these different things, and like experiencing how He fulfills each one of those roles. Like maybe that's what it means to be perfect, is He is all we need because He fulfills all these different roles we need in our life. I mean, that's one area that I still need to improve upon, is like, I know a lot about things like about God or about the Bible or about biblical archaeology. But having that father-son relationship or any other role relationship, that can be difficult.
Fulfill those roles in your life personally.
Well, I know He's fulfilled them, but just me like recognizing them and having that relationship with the Creator, with the Father. That's a hard one for me because I always feel like God, ruler of the universe. Like how could He, like experiencing Him as a father? But that's what I'm working on.
Well, I was going to ask you what's something God is still working on you right now, but
No,
you might have answered both questions.
I think so.
All right, so the last question. If you could pass on one piece of wisdom from your story, what would it be?
Oh man. Never cease to be amazed, because I look back like at the pandemic 5 years later and I think, I never want to go through that again. But man, where I can look back at that and say, like, I learned a lot about myself. And there are things like I don't know if I'd be on as good of a track as I am today if I didn't go through those things. But never cease to be amazed where you're going to be at in just a year from now.
Yeah.
You can look back and say it's all that was worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's good, because I've seen the different phases of Brandon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could almost break it into phases, you know, and it's good to see you come out on the other side. And I know you said you're still learning and growing, as we all are, but just
Want to know the scary part?
what's that?
New phases means it's a cycle. So be prepared for this in another 5 years. It's going to be a repeat. Just kidding.
I'll be like the name it and claim it preachers. Don't claim that.
Phases of the moon, they repeat.
No, I'm glad to see you on this side of the pandemic, and
Yeah, and I mean,
you're a fighter. I know that.
oh well, thank you.
Yeah, you're definitely a fighter.
I mean, I have my days. Some days, like for whatever reason, neurochemicals in the brain, distributions, whatever. Like there are days where it's like the medication just does not work. Like for me personally, where it just doesn't seem to make a difference. But then there are days where it just hits a bit different, and it's like I'm like overjoyed.
Yeah.
So I mean.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed having you around these 10 years, and I know you're the type, wherever that next God wave takes you, you're gonna surf it, wherever it goes. But I hope you're around another 10 years for me personally. But I've appreciated your journey, and I know it's taught you a lot. But like I said before, just being your friend through it all has taught me as well. So I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you too.
Yeah. Good talking with you.
Good talking to you too.